What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you by the Hockey News. I'm your host, Emma Lingan. I'm joined today by Michael Augello and Adam Kierszenblad of the Hockey News. Got lots to talk about today, but before we do get into all of the topics, all of the latest and greatest storylines from around the NHL, do want to remind you that for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com and get in on the action. All right, speaking of action, guys, we got game 2 of the Stanley Cup final tonight in Raleigh between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Carolina Hurricanes. In game 1, which of course the Vegas Golden Knights won, Shea Theodore had 3 points for Vegas. He's in the middle of a 3-game point streak right now, too, in the playoffs. He's now tied for third on the Golden Knights in points this postseason with 14 through 17 games. So Theodore historically has dealt with a lot of injuries. He's been limited in his ability to actually, be put in the conversation legitimately as, among the top defensemen in the league because of his injury history. Mike, do you think he's proving with this playoff run that he actually is one of the more underrated defensemen in this league?
I don't know how he could consider to be underrated if he's made the Canadian Olympic team and the Four Nations team. I think he's considered one of the best defensemen in the league. Maybe he's sort of out of sight, out of mind because he's playing in Vegas, but I've always considered him a top-tier defenseman, and I think his role with the Golden Knights has only been more accentuated by the absence of Alex Pietrangelo. He's had to step into more of a leadership role there and a minutes leader. And, the injury thing was a question with him earlier in his career, but I think he's gotten past that. And I really think that, the Golden Knights' fortunes in terms of winning the Stanley Cup this year will rest on Theodore and a couple other key players on their roster.
Well, we've talked a lot about how Vegas, plays such a stingy defensive game in front of Carter Hart, and that they've been able to really suffocate their opponents a lot throughout these playoffs. So, Adam, when you look at what Shea Theodore has been able to do in the postseason here for Vegas, how much do you think he's been a part of that?
I think Shea Theodore has been a huge part of not just this Stanley Cup run, but when they won the Cup and when they went to the Cup in their first year, that was a massive mistake by the Anaheim Ducks to, let him go to Vegas through the expansion draft. Theodore has developed into, maybe not a 1A, but maybe a 1B defenseman on 30, 32 NHL teams. This is a guy who delivers offensively. He can match up against really anybody. He's been there before. He has he has a pretty extensive career now. So yeah, I think that especially with, as Mike said, Pietrangelo being gone, we're finally getting the chance to understand that Shea Theodore is good. He's been good for a long time, but it really is he's been in the shadows of the Jack Eichel, the Mark Stone, the Pietrangelo, and now Mitch Marner. He's been in their shadows, but he is a key part of their entire team.
Well, definitely one of the top players, one of the key guys for the Vegas Golden Knights. Unfortunately, a recurring theme here throughout, not obviously just in this series, there's only been one game, but throughout the postseason, recurring theme for the Carolina Hurricanes is that their top players, specifically their top forward line of Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, and Seth Jarvis, has just been really inconsistent throughout these playoffs. So they've certainly had their moments. I mean, we saw Svechnikov had the overtime winner in game 3 against Montreal in the Eastern Conference final. Aho had the 2-goal game when they knocked out Ottawa in the first round. So they're still, though, as a unit, barely producing half a point per game apiece so far in these playoffs. So we talk a lot about in the playoffs and really just in general, you need your top guys to be your top guys. And that's something that has been an issue for Carolina here. So, I mean, Mike, when you look at it, it's hard to argue that any line changes should be made at this point. I know when we talked about this, Montreal was dealing with kind of the same issue, and you had brought up maybe switching up some of the lines for the Montreal Canadiens, but kind of hard to argue that in Carolina's case. But I don't know. Do you think that there would be some merit to Rod Brind'Amour shaking some things up? And what's the reason behind these struggles for these top guys?
I mean, the problem with breaking up that top line is that you're going to affect the three other lines because, I mean, if you move Seth Jarvis down to the second line and you put Jordan Martinook up on the first line, then you risk having two lines that are not working. I mean, right now that Stahl line has been excellent. The Mighty Mites with Taylor Hall have been fantastic, and the fourth line has produced. It's up to these guys. These are star players. Aho is, I'd say, one of the top 15 centers in the league. Svechnikov is a big body, but got a ton of skill, and Seth Jarvis has made Olympic teams and Four Nations teams. You look at what happened in Game 1. I still do not understand how Seth Jarvis tries to pass the puck on that one opportunity when he's 10 feet in front of Carter Hart. You just don't do that. You shoot the puck. So I think they're thinking too much. I think they're, maybe gripping the stick a little bit too tight here. But if they're going to win this series, they need Aho, Svechnikov, and Jarvis to perform.
We talk a lot about how you need depth in the playoffs, and the Hurricanes have the depth, but they don't have the top line guys really firing on all cylinders here. So, Adam, when you're looking at this, I mean, is there anything you can kind of point to as to what has been the cause of these issues for these top players and these top forwards in Carolina? And do you think it even is worth entertaining the idea of changing up the lines at all?
Well, I think that the problem with changing up the lines is that your other lines are going and you don't want to mess with them. Like, why do you want to separate the Stankoven, Hall, and Blake line? Why would you want to separate Stahl and Ehlers? Like, your fourth line is good. So, I mean, the top guys really need to step up. Like, Seth Jarvis, Sebastian Aho, Svechnikov, like, these are top players in the NHL. These are players who have been through a lot. They're in the Stanley Cup final for a reason. You can't have Jalen Chatfield as, one of your top point producers in the Stanley Cup final, which he is at the moment. Like, I'm a big Jalen Chatfield fan, but if Chatfield has more points than Aho, Svechnikov, and Jarvis in the Stanley Cup final, I don't know if you're winning that Stanley Cup final necessarily. But yeah, like, I get that they're going to be used in top line minutes, but they have to also bury their chances. Like, if, I expect the series to be a little bit more goaltending focus. Like, I don't think we're going to get, 9-10 goal games the rest of the year, but like Hart and Anderson both did not play well in Game 1. Like, they were both negative on the goals saved above expected, analytics. So yeah, you need your star players to step up in the Stanley Cup final. Like, great depth is great, but yeah, I mean, unless they want to make that Stankoven line the number one line, they're going to need Aho, Jarvis, and Svechnikov to find a way to start putting the back of the puck in the back of the net. Not just one in every 4 games, like constantly. So it's great if you have a 4-point game one night, but you need to have a 1-point game the next night, a 2-point game the next night. Like, there needs to be some consistency.
The one problem with that, Adam, in terms of putting that Stankoven, Blake, Hall line as your number one line, that was the line that was out there when Thomas Hertl scored the game-winning goal, and it was either Stankoven or Blake. I couldn't see which one that missed out on the reach to get the puck away from Hertl when he scored. So you need your big guy, you need your big dogs to hunt, and right now they're not doing it. That you need the depth scoring, but you also need your big guys who make the most money to score the goals and to win the games for you.
Well, like you said, lots of mistakes on both sides, very back and forth in Game 1, and we'll see if we get the same kind of action tonight in Game 2 when they meet again in Raleigh. But in the meantime, lots of other news to talk about around the hockey world. For example, on Wednesday, the NHL announced that Tampa Bay Lightning head coach Jon Cooper has won the Jack Adams Award for the 2025-26 season. Finally, right? I feel like it's crazy to think that he had never won the award before now, but he is the NHL's longest tenured coach. He guided the Lightning to the Stanley Cup playoffs for the 9th consecutive season with a 50, 26, and 6 record this year. It was the 5th time that Tampa Bay has won 50 games under Jon Cooper. So Mike, obviously you're in Buffalo where Lindy Ruff was one of the finalists as well for the Jack Adams Award, along with Pittsburgh Penguins head coach Dan Muse. I think all three very deserving of being finalists. But, were you surprised that Cooper won the award over the other two? And what do you think this win will do for his legacy as a head coach?
First, on his legacy, I don't think his legacy is enhanced at all because he's going to make the Hall of Fame. He's won the Stanley Cup 2 times. He's won Olympic gold medals and 4 nations. He didn't need the Jack Adams to sort of garner his resume. I frankly was a little surprised that it was as close as it was because you look at what Cooper had to go through, and this is not taking away from Lindy Ruff. In Buffalo, there are a lot of people who are incensed at the fact that Lindy Ruff lost this. I understand from the Buffalo perspective because they missed the playoffs for 14 years in a row. They were in last place in the Eastern Conference on December the 9th, and then had the best record in the NHL from that point up. It was a great job, but they exceeded expectations. That's what they did. I mean, it's not coach of the year for exceeding expectations. It's coach of the year. And Cooper, with all the injuries that the Tampa Bay Lightning had, I mean, Vasilevsky was healthy, but their top 3 defensemen, Hedman, McDonough, Eric Cernak, all hurt. You had guys like Charles Edward Dastu, who I've never heard of until this year, step in and score and play well. Up front, Kucherov was healthy, but they missed Hagel for a while. They missed Point for a while. They missed Cirelli, Nick Paul. I mean, you can go down their roster and, other than a couple of their key players, everybody missed significant time, and he was able to piece together a roster and win 50 games. I'm not saying that Lindy Ruff didn't do a great job. He did. I didn't think he did the best job. I thought this was Jon Cooper's best job of his career, and it wasn't a career achievement award. He deserved the Jack Adams.
Adam, are you in agreement? Were you surprised to see how close the vote was, or do you think that this was fair?
I wasn't surprised to see how close the vote was just because there's such a limited amount of votes. Like, it's not, like a PHWA, yeah, that's correct. Voting system where there's like hundreds of votes. It's the NHL broadcaster, so there's a limited number. But I mean, Jon Cooper deserves it. He deserved it multiple times over his career. And this is not like he got it because of a legacy thing. It's like Mike said, injuries. He dealt with them. And he turned Darren Radish into a player that got Norris votes. Just think about that. And I also want to preface this by saying these votes are done before the playoffs start. So don't say this coach should have won because they took their team to this round. Is no, as soon as the regular season ends, that's when the voting is in, basically, or a couple days before. So, I mean, congratulations to Jon Cooper, finally deserved it. But yeah, I was surprised that he didn't show up on more ballots than he did, if that makes sense. Because I know that I think Dan Muse and Lindy Ruff showed up on more ballots, but Jon Cooper had more votes because it's a 5-4-3-2-1 system. But yeah, Jon Cooper deserves this 100%, no question. There's no asterisk. There's no this person should have won it. It should have been Jon Cooper from the start.
Yeah, like I said at the start, surprising. It's strange to think that he had never won the award before this year. As Mike said, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion as well. So well-deserved. Congratulations to Tampa Bay Lightning head coach Jon Cooper. Speaking of awards, though, we've got other awards that are getting handed out this week. The NHL announced this week that Minnesota Wild forward Marcus Foligno is the recipient of the King Clancy Memorial Trophy for the 2025-26 season. That's awarded to the player that best exemplifies leadership qualities on and off the ice. Usually for their humanitarian efforts, it's someone who's made a noteworthy humanitarian contribution in his community. So Marcus Foligno, he collaborated with his brother Nick and the NHLPA and the Wild and the Blackhawks to raise more than $200,000 for cancer research in honor of their late mother. So Foligno, he's been part of the Wild organization for the last 9 seasons, and it's always kind of funny when a player like him, a guy like him, wins an award like this, because if you think of his on ice reputation, he's not necessarily the old-fashioned goon enforcer type, but he's a big power forward, and he's aggressive, and he's not afraid to drop the gloves, and he definitely gets that sort of sandpaper reputation. But to see him win this award for his contributions off the ice, and then joined in Minnesota by his brother Nick after the trade deadline too. Mike, what do you think about the impact that Marcus and Nick Foligno have had with the Wild, both on and off the ice this year?
Well, Marcus Foligno represents one of the bigger mistakes that the Buffalo Sabres made in the last decade, because in 2017 he was traded from the Sabres to Minnesota. And, he didn't show what he showed in Minnesota in Buffalo, but there were signs there. He was a big, bruising power forward, not exactly the scorer that his father Mike was, who was a Sabre. But I mean, an excellent player who could skate, who could hit, and you could see that the formula was there for him to be an effective depth player, and he has really thrived in Minnesota in that role. And he's been that third line tough bruising winger for almost a decade. And if you look at the Sabres over the last few years, they could have used that guy. Everything that he did off the ice. I mean, him and his brother, they lose their mom years ago to cancer, and what they've done has been phenomenal, and they should be credited for it. But he is a very effective player, and somebody that I think the Sabres regret in retrospect losing in a trade.
Yeah, if you think about it, that sort of big bruising persona that he has, and the way that he plays, it's kind of become a bit of the Minnesota Wild's identity, is sort of the way that they play as a team as a whole. Adam, when you look at Marcus Foligno's impact on the ice and off the ice, and now that he is joined in Minnesota, or was joined in Minnesota by his brother Nick, what do you think of just everything that he's done and his impact that he's made?
I think you need to have these players not just on the ice but in the locker room, because they just kind of bring the vibe up a little bit. And I always find it interesting when somebody like Foligno wins a King Clancy award, because I've noticed that it's a lot like the people who really have these campaigns in the community and really help out. Yes, there are star players that do it, but it's a lot of the depth guys. A good example is Curtis Douglas here in Vancouver. He has been incredible in the community, and he's only been here for a couple weeks. You need those type of guys who, they're not necessarily going to end up on the score sheet every day, but they're going to make your team harder to play against. They're going to, make your team more likable in the community. They're going to become those fan favorites because people understand that they work a little bit harder, because to get to where they needed to be, they couldn't necessarily do it just based off of skill. They need to bring something else. But yeah, all of these, I'm just going to put it out, all these players are very skilled, but there's definitely levels to every single sport on that. But I love it when these, depth guys or these experienced guys start getting recognition from the league for what they've been doing off the ice for years. And yeah, I think that it was a smart move by Minnesota to bring him and his brother in. Obviously, it didn't work out this year, but that's the Stanley Cup playoffs. You could build a super team, and it doesn't matter in the end sometimes. But yeah, having I guess this version of the Bash brothers together is definitely something that probably helped that locker room, not just on the ice but off the ice, just based off the experience that they brought.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you brought up Vancouver as well as an example here. Since you're in Vancouver, Adam, I do want to ask you, there's been a lot of debate on how the top picks in the 2026 draft class should fall later this month. There's been a lot of debate about that. And the Canucks, of course, hold the 3rd overall pick. So they're going to have to be prepared for a few different scenarios here because there isn't really a consensus number 1 and number 2 in this year's class. So, of course, we've talked about him before. Caleb Malhotra has been viewed as one of the top candidates, if not the top candidate for the Canucks at number 3. And obviously, the Canucks have just hired his father, Manny, as head coach. So when you look at that, do you think that the hiring of his father would complicate things? Do you think it would be a benefit? Do you think it would be a disadvantage? And aside from all of that, if you can separate those two things, do you think that Caleb Malhotra is the type of player that the Canucks should be looking to select if he is available at number 3?
Well, I mean, it obviously creates like an interesting dilemma. Like, let's just like, we're not going to sugarcoat this. It's going to be a little bit weird in that locker room if Caleb Malhotra is drafted by the Canucks and Manny is his coach. But Malhotra had an interesting quote in his introduction press conference, which was when his kids come up to him, they have to decide if they want to talk to Dad Manny or Coach Manny. And when it comes to hockey and Caleb, it's always Coach Manny. So, I mean, I think that they've been working on this for a while. Like they may have, figured that this situation could come up in the future, but I mean, Manny is the ultimate professional. Like, I don't think he's going to give his Caleb like 2 extra minutes just because, they have to go home to the same house together. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. And I mean, we saw it's a little bit different, but like Rob Brendamore and his son, right? Like Brendamore's son was playing in the AHL. Like when he came up, he was getting under 10 minutes some nights just because Brendamore was like, yeah, it's cool to have my son here, but we need to win games. Like that's the most important. So it's an interesting situation. I mean, Malhotra for me that's a not best player available at 3. That's that's a positional pick. I get why there's a lot of people who like him, and I get why he's been in that conversation for 3. I think that if you're going to go for best player available, if McKinnon and Stenberg are taken, you got there's 2 really strong right shot defensemen in Reed and Verhoff. Like those are guys that probably play a stronger role or a higher role than Malhotra at the NHL level. But I mean, yeah, like the kid, there's a reason why everybody has said positive things about Malhotra. Like he stepped up in the OHL. He's considered a leader, but if we're talking about what he probably is going to be developed into, they already have Braden Coots in Vancouver. Like you're kind of looking at another Braden Coots. So at what point do you say, listen, we have Zeev, let's partner him up with a guy who could be a first line center, or let's draft a guy who might be a second line, might be a third line center, or Zeev with a first line right shot defenseman, or are we going to go get a second or third line center? So that's really the conversation that I think is surrounding this whole, 3rd overall pick.
Yeah, you see a lot of teams are going to be dealing with that. I think it's about best available versus best positional fit. So, Mike, if you're the Canucks and trying to separate as much of, the family dynamic out of this as much as possible, you look at Malhotra, do you think Caleb Malhotra is the best fit for the Canucks if he is available at number 3? Or like Adam is saying, would you maybe focus on a different position?
I mean, I think the big factor here is what San Jose does at 2, because I think everybody's expecting McKenna to go 1 to Toronto. If, what is speculated, San Jose is going to go defense, probably Chase Reed. Then Stenberg is on the board at 3, and it's Stenberg or Malhotra. You're opening yourself up right off the bat, Ryan Johnson and the Sedins, to a lot of criticism if Stenberg goes to Chicago at 4 and becomes a star, and Malhotra goes to Boston University and takes 2 or 3 years to get to the NHL. And then at that point, you don't know what exactly he is. I mean, I think it's a lot of pressure on the kid. I'm sure that Manny Malhotra and Caleb Malhotra are prepared for this, but I think as an organization, it should be taken out of his hands. You should be taking the best player available, whether it's Stenberg or one of the defensemen. I mean, Malhotra is the best center in this draft, but it's not a particularly strong center draft.
All right. Well, lots to see, what'll happen there with the draft. Again, I feel like there's been a lot more debate about, the top of the order in this year's draft class than there has been in recent years. Speaking of which, since we're talking about the draft, Adam, I want to ask you about the junior hockey news. The season just wrapped up in junior hockey. 3 of the top defensemen in the 2026 draft class from the WHL have already committed to playing college hockey next season. So when you're looking at, is it Carson Carrolls? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Going in North Dakota, Daxon Rudolph at Denver, and then Ryan Lynn also at Denver. Those are in addition to projected top pick in 2027, Landon DuPont, who's rumored to be, pondering a move to the NCAA as well after making a run to the Memorial Cup final with Everett this year. So when you're looking at these here, like these moves, where do you see DuPont landing now that you know what's happening with some of these other picks?
Well, the DuPont situation is interesting because he was asked at the Memorial Cup. And he gave kind of like, I'm focused on Everett. I'm focused on Everett. I'm focused on Everett. I've talked to Verhoff. I'm focused on Everett. And then another, I'm focused on it. Like, he just kept saying the right things about like, this is where I am. I'm at the Memorial Cup. This is my focus. I'll deal with everything after. And I mean, like, the NCAA conversation is interesting because I know that some people brought up that he might go to Denver, and now Denver has, a stacked blue line that maybe like is better than some NHL blue lines. Like, but overall, like, it really is going to be interesting to see because if he does go to the NCAA, he is going to get a lot of money. But I do wonder if the Verhoff situation is going to play a factor in here. Like, Verhoff went to the NCAA and we thought that he was going to go first overall, right? Like, it was McKenna and Verhoff, and now some mock drafts have Verhoff 10 and 11. Like, he really struggled at the NCAA level. He didn't perform well at the U18s. And like, that is a factor that players are going to think about. Like, also there's a little bit of like, I've talked to DuPont enough over the last couple of years. Like, he really, really wants to win a Memorial Cup. Like, he wants that to be his legacy. They came so close this year. They went to the final. And I wonder if like that internal hunger is like, listen, I want to stay in the WHL for one more year and like try to win that Memorial Cup, because Everett's going to have, like, Everett could potentially have another strong team. We'll see how everything shakes out, but like, we're not 100% sure because a lot of players are coming from the USHL now to the WHL. But like, yeah, don't rule out the possibility of him returning to the WHL. I think it's, not the favorite to happen. I think that, there's some high-end schools that will throw around a lot of money, but yeah, it's going to definitely set an interesting precedent, not just for the WHL, but all across the league for these players that, in the future are projected first overall picks a couple years out. And if they're going to leave early rather than leave after they've been drafted.
Well, definitely lots to keep an eye on there with DuPont and see what he's going to do. Of course, DuPont expected to be a top pick in 2027, but shifting back, looking at this upcoming 2026 draft at the end of the month, the combine is underway in Buffalo this week. So that gives a lot of media members, such as our own Michael Augello and other GMs, to have the opportunity to meet with these players for the first time, see how they fare in their physical testing. Obviously, there's no on-ice component to the combine. History has shown that it's not always the best indicator of how a player is going to develop this combine, just with only the physical testing and the opportunities to meet and get that face-to-face time with NHL front offices. But Mike, in your opinion, do you think there should be an on-ice component to the draft combine? Because I think a lot of the prevailing thought here is that these players have been getting scouted for months, if not years. And so, it's like, how much are you really going to learn from an on-ice component at the combine? But there's a lot of debate on this. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the on-ice component is from October to May. when they played for their respective teams all over the world. If you don't know what they can do on the ice, I mean, there's obviously a variance in terms of the quality that you're facing, but you have a general idea of what that player can do. I mean, obviously the physical testing that they do is an indicator. I know that Sam Bennett had one pull up, or there are some players who have fallen off on one particular area, but then it doesn't prevent them from being a very effective pro. I think there's also an insurance issue with them going on the ice again, because it increases the possibility of them getting injured. And so I think that, and I have seen some players in the past where, they've been injured in the OHL playoffs and they don't participate in all the physical testing because they're injured. I actually think Brady Martin was like that in his draft year. So, I mean, I think there's value in the testing. I think there's value in the on-ice component, but I don't think that, in early June, a couple weeks before the draft, you go down that road of having them go out and skate and do those types of things. The knowledge base of the scouting staffs of the 32 NHL teams should provide that information, and that's where they should go. Leave it from there.
Adam, what do you think?
I've always been told that your lists are already determined before you go to the draft combine. And the only thing that teams really want to pay attention to is the interviews that they do with players. Like, the interviews are more important. We took this player out for dinner, and we asked them a bunch of weird questions. That's more what will change. If a player does 13 pull-ups or 14 pull-ups, it's not going to make a massive difference, especially because there's less than 100 prospects there. Maybe if there's 300 prospects and it's should we draft him in the 7th round or not? That's a conversation. But at this point, the lists are set. I think it's more an opportunity for media to go and meet these prospects, and for the NHL to put out all of this content and the storylines and create talking points. But from a team perspective, this is just based off my knowledge of talking to people. The combine is more of let's just meet these players. Let's talk to other GMs. Let's talk to agents about, potential trades. Brendan Gallagher's name has now been out there, right? He's not coming to Montreal. This is a great opportunity for NHL teams to talk to Gallagher's agent one-on-one, face-to-face, or learn more about whatever prospects these agents represent. So it's really an opportunity for everybody to be in the same room together and talk about league business, and then also see, how these prospects perform under pressure. But yeah, as Mike said, there's no need for on ice because they've watched them for 9 months. Some players have played over 100 games. There's really no need to add more on ice stress testing at this point.
Like you said, mostly an opportunity for media. So make sure you follow along with Mike Augello when he is at the Combine later this week and providing coverage for the Hockey News. Want to wrap up today, though, talking about Anders Lee. There is a report from Pierre Lebrun that Lee is preparing to hit free agency. He met with Islanders GM Matthew Darche this week. Lebrun said the Islanders are still going to keep trying and they want to bring him back, but both sides are still pretty far apart in their negotiations. So Lee is 35 years old. He's got 19 goals, 42 points this season, is the captain of the New York Islanders. So if he does hit free agency, Mike, do you see a potential landing spot for him that makes sense?
Obviously, I think he probably wants to go back to the Islanders, but he's probably looking for term and money. He's from Medina, Minnesota, so my first indicator would be the Minnesota Wild, but we don't know how much cap space they're going to have, and they would probably want him to take a hometown discount. So if he doesn't go back to the Islanders, I'll say the Wild.
Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that this is a circle back moment where they eventually figure it out. It just makes sense for him to be on the island. But yeah, the Islanders are going through a bunch of changes. Barzell's name is out there as well on the trade rumor board, so we'll see. But I would love to see him go and chase a cup somewhere. Maybe, I don't know how they would make it work, but if he takes a discount to go play in Colorado or Carolina, we talked about Carolina needing more scoring. Andres Lee could do that. But yeah, I'd like to see him go and chase a cup somewhere, because I feel like that's a player who deserves, at least one more shot at the Stanley Cup.
Florida or Vegas, mercenary.
There you go. Well, it could be any one of those, could end up back on the island. Of course, if you want to follow along with what's going on with Anders Lee, with the Stanley Cup final, with the draft, the combine, any of that, you can find it all at the Hockey News. It's been the go-to for all things hockey since 1947. 12 issues packed with game and player insights, plus a free issue to start, is a must-have for any fan. Head to thn.com/free and grab your subscription today. That's going to do it for today's episode of The Wraparound. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in today. Listen to us talking some hockey. We will be back with an all-new episode next week. For now, for Michael Augello and Adam Kierszenblad, I'm Emma Lingan. This is The Wraparound, and we will see you next time.